All right. So introducing Anna. Anna is from the UK. She is a L&D professional with 6 years of experience. She likes to blend creativity, technology, and strategic thinking to deliver great learning experiences. She is also award-winning on creating learning apps and using virtual reality for enable learning. And she is not new to knowledge sharing. She actually has a podcast that I invite everyone to also listen to, the Everyday is a School Day podcast. So excited to learn from you today, Anna. And without any further ado, Anna, I am passing the word to you.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna sort it. But it's so great to see people from around the world today with clearly all a passion for social learning. So if I could just have a thumbs up that people can see my screen, that would be great. Brilliant. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk about my favourite topic, which is all around peer learning and social learning. And I'm specifically going to talk to you about how we revolutionise peer learning to create that peer learning revolution. So thank you for introducing me. But yeah, just to add a bit more context, I'm Hannah Frame. I currently work at BAE Systems as Finance Capability Manager. I'm just finishing my 4th week there, so it's very new. But prior to that, I was at St James's Place, which is a FTSE 100 company and kind of the biggest UK wealth manager. So that will be what I'm going to be talking about my experience here today and how I created a peer learning revolution there. So my previous role was as social learning, technology, and innovation manager, and I had a mission to make sure that learning wasn't done to people, but instead through people. So in that, I genuinely believe that in L&D, we're facing a bit of an overwhelm when it comes to learning in terms of everything that exists out there at the moment. I mean, just taking a look at the screen, you've got everything from virtual reality to learning experience platforms to gamification. So there's a sense of where do you start, and actually it can be very easy to get caught up in the new and shiny tools that exist out there. I know that I also have a very much an interest in learning technology, so I'm very guilty of getting warped up into the excitement around that and what it can bring. But today I wanted to kind of pose this thought on screen. So what if the greatest asset to employee learning isn't from us as an L&D team, it isn't from the new and shiny tools that are out there, but instead the employees themselves? Which takes us on to power of peer learning, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. And in that context, our peers can be anyone, so regardless of job role, age, gender, if you connect and you collaborate on the same topic, then they are your peers. So here today, we're all peers with one another. So it'd be great to kind of hear from you all. As throughout the session, you'll see that there's a bit of interactivity that I'd like to. So if, yeah, definitely take yourselves off mute, share in the chat when I kind of get to those pieces. So just quickly then, what I will cover in kind of the next 30 minutes as I do my kind of show and tell, I'll talk to you about 3 things. Firstly, why peer learning. Second, my first-hand experience around building a learning culture. And then finally, over to you to think about how you can bring it into your organisation and also sharing what you already do. So firstly then, why peer learning? When I came to designing this session and thinking about what it is that I wanted to talk about when it comes to answering this question and setting the scene, I thought I could show you great pieces of research and different ways that different companies are doing things. But essentially, you could all find that through a quick Google. And I'm assuming we're all here today because we have that knowledge and understanding of what peer learning is. So I just want to ask you to come off mute, share in the chat, and just hopefully you would have seen an email that went out yesterday just asking you, in your own words, what are the benefits of peer learning? So yeah, pop it in the chat, come off mute. Why peer learning? I need to work. I can see the chat. So good chatter. Yeah, some great ones coming through on the chat. So contextual help where needed, cost saving, absolutely. Scalability, brilliant. Yeah, unless you have a training team of 50 people, you can't accelerate learning. Absolutely, and you'll see me talk about that today. Kind of that varied set of perspectives, absolutely. Having a coach and mentor inside the organization reinforces learning, more engaging, boosts up confidence. Absolutely, some great things coming through on the chat. It makes learning more relatable, motivates employees, fosters growth, and a sense of connection. Absolutely. So I think it's all clear that we know that peer learning has some great benefits. And I really want to put that into action in this moment and bring it to life to you right now. So I'll give you a kind of common L&D challenge, one of us that many of us might be tackling here in the room. And I'll invite you to share a quick idea, tactic, or insight that's worked for you. So how many here are familiar with the scenario that you've got a wave of new managers, they're technically brilliant, but they don't really have the people skills? Or you're part of a culture where it's like promotion after promotion after promotion, and you find yourself with these accidental managers. I feel like a few nods on screen, and I can certainly admit that I've come from an environment where that existed. 1,000% in the chat. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all familiar with this challenge. So what I'm not going to ask you to do now is to just take a moment to familiarize yourself with the scenario on screen. And I really encourage you to share in the chat just some short, practical answers about one thing that you've seen, heard, or do that can help tackle this problem. And that could be a learning activity, a habit, a nudge, or a peer-led approach. So please do go ahead and share in the chat something that you've done to tackle this. Mentoring program, brilliant. Brilliant, some great ones coming through on the chat. So new manager induction program, one-to-one coaching, leadership training, buddying. If anyone feels comfortable coming off mute to share a bit more context around any of these things, please do. Community for first-time leaders, lunch and learns, upskill for promotion. Yeah, brilliant. Action learning sets. Some great answers. I think it's clear to see that we've all kind of familiar with this problem. So what I want you to do, and I encourage you to do in the spirit of peer learning, is just take a moment to like kind of scroll through the chat. I can already see some hearts and some likings go against some comments, but just find one idea that you might not have thought of before, or maybe made you think, I'd like to try that. And either tag that person in the chat, let them know, drop a thumbs up or a heart on their message. I'll give you a few minutes just to read through. I can see, yeah, the heart's definitely increasing. This lean coffee framework is getting a lot. I don't know, Sylvia, if you're happy to come off mute to share a bit around that.
Sure. So I have a background in change management, leadership development, and especially in the tech world, using a lot of agile mindset, agile methodology. And one of the things that I found the most effective was keeping it really informal so that the managers didn't feel the pressure of, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or I don't know what to do, and how do I show up? And lean coffee is a very structured, so it gives safety, but informal way of people coming up with their own topics. And in these time boxes, the topics get the amount of time that essentially the whole group agrees upon, and everyone's voice is heard. So it's very open. It's a way to really get the collective intelligence in the room. Everyone gets heard. Almost all the topics can be shared, but then there's visibility into how many topics there are. And so that's why, and you can do it in an hour over lunch. It can be something that's quite easy to do.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Have you seen that's had quite a positive impact in your organization?
Yes, in all the organizations that I've worked in, it's something that I bring in my toolkit.
Amazing. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Welcome.
But I think what we did there through kind of the sharing ideas and in the chat, and I continue to send them through as and when and react to each other's, But we just did a bit of this peer learning in action. So no slides, no formal training, just real people in the room here sharing different strategies, different ways that kind of people would approach that challenge to help us all to think differently. And I think when you create moments like this, whether it's in meetings or over the lean coffee that you just kind of kindly explained, is that you're really starting to build this culture where learning is continuous and collective. So thank you all for your engagement there. So the second thing that I'm going to speak to you about today is my first-hand experience and touch on my case study from how I started to build a peer learning culture at St James's Place. So just as a quick reminder of St James's Place, it's a FTSE 100 company. There's over 16,000 of us. And my vision and role was very much to look at how we could create a social and peer learning culture within the business. So now, as part of my role, I was always looking as to what other companies were doing, like as you should, to kind of benchmark and get ideas. And something that really stuck out to me was something that Google did. And I'm sure there'll be people in the room here that are familiar with the Googler to Googler program. But essentially, Google created, and very organically, over 6,000 volunteers within the business to all teach one another their skills of expertise. So really built this organic peer learning culture within that didn't require us and L&D to kind of do the heavy lifting, but instead it came from the people who all taught one another. I think someone shared in the chat earlier around it does take that pressure of us as L&D, and that's one of the benefits of peer learning, and absolutely that's what Google managed to do, and definitely something then that I wanted to try and input and see whether it would be something appropriate for St James's Place. Now, the next thing I think that L&D have, us working in this space, is a hard time proving our worth. I think it's becoming easier, but I still think it's a struggle. And I want to make sure that the initiative and the peer learning initiative I had a quick and easy way of showing its worth and its impact. So my top tip to all of you today is to definitely do that, link back to your corporate strategy. And that's ultimately how you get the buy-in from the top and you help to prove impact. So for the purpose of my case study and the story today, I wanted to focus on two things that are important within SJP's corporate strategy. And that's being brilliant at the basics and being a performance-focused organisation. Now, there are much more to our corporate strategy than just these two things. We wouldn't be a successful FTSE 100 company otherwise, but I knew that my peer learning initiative really wanted to tie into these two things that I pulled out of our corporate strategy. So I knew that I wanted to do something that Google had done in terms of creating this peer learning environment and network, and then also I knew that I needed to tie into my corporate strategy. So I wanted to do a pilot. I feel like we all love and know the benefits of a pilot within L&D. So I knew where I wanted to start, but I didn't know where to go next. I didn't know how to make sure that my peer learning initiative would actually tie into the strategy. So I linked in with an L&D consultant within the team, and I worked with this consultant to run training needs analysis, look at our data touch points, and also look at surveys to really find what the business need was, so I could ensure that I was tapping into this. Now, in doing that, three key things came out as to what the people were asking for, and that was networking skills, Excel skills, and to no surprise, people wanted to learn more about AI. So in reviewing this with a consultant and kind of getting her guidance, I thought, and we agreed that we would focus in on Excel, purely because it was a widely used tool across the business, but also when thinking back to that corporate strategy, it really helps people become more brilliant at the basics and drive that performance-focused organisation. So I knew that by focusing on Excel, I would be able to tap into that, improve the impact there. So that takes me on to Steve Miller. And now Steve is a bit of a legend when it comes to SJP, not because he is a brilliant L&D expert or a top presenter, but because he's an Excel whiz. Now, bear with me, the where's Wally will make sense in a minute. I trust me, Steve is a real person, but for the purpose of this, you'll hopefully see why in a minute. But essentially, so Steve Miller, he was an Excel whiz, and I was very fortunate that I knew that within the business, he was the person to go to for Excel. So I linked in with him. I asked him, I kind of explained my vision, my mission with driving this peer learning culture, and worked with him to design 4 sessions based on Excel. Now, it's important to note that within these sessions, they were driven by the needs of the people, so getting that peer input, because it was ultimately something that needed to be driven that would benefit them. So we shaped 4 sessions on Excel based on their needs by going out and asking people, where are your pain points, where are you stuck, where do you need help with Excel, so we could really make sure that we were benefiting from them. So we launched these 4 sessions. I went in, I sat in and observed and worked with Steve. And although Steve is a brilliant Excel whiz, as mentioned, he's not an L&D facilitator or presenter. And I think we can all agree in the room that that's a real skill and can be quite hard to do. So asking an expert within the business to suddenly run a session when they've not had experience before was definitely a learn, and also a great reason and proof that a pilot is important. Because I sat down with the skills team following this to design a training and facilitating toolkit that meant that anyone within the business could go and pick up this toolkit and then run with it to design and run a session in a way that was structured it in the L&D best practice, whilst also making sure they had our full support and guidance in helping create these sessions. But then in terms of the impact, so evaluating that impact, it created a real buzz in the office. So kind of 90% of sessions were oversubscribed. We saw a real increase in demand, and that real kind of buzz that comes with connecting peers with one another that might not have the opportunity to on a day-to-day basis. So I knew that I was on to a real winner, but my challenge here was, how do I find my Steves across a business of 16,000 people? So it was a little bit like, where's Wally? And I knew that that would be an absolute admin nightmare if I was to try and go and find all the experts within the business, and something that just feasibly wasn't possible. So I knew I needed a technology solution here, and having been interested in learning technologies, it was a great opportunity to go out and explore what existed to help drive peer learning. I'm glad that someone just said love the Where's Wally tie-in, but yeah, absolutely, it was kind of this insight into how am I going to find people. So I did lots of research, and I found a great company called eSwap. And the best way to describe eSwap is a bit like a dating site for skill swapping. So people put into the system the skills they want to learn, the skills that they can offer, and then it matches people on a 2-way or a 1-way basis. And this gave me great insight into what were the demands in the business, like what are people asking for, but also who are offering to teach these and actually identify themselves as experts within these topics. So I took that data and I reached out to them in a very simple way over email, just to ask them if they wanted to run a session explaining the benefits of the pilot, the mission, and the kind of benefit that it will have to the company. And so fortunately for me, it led me to launching an entire learning month that was driven by peers within the business. So us and L&D didn't run any of these sessions. It was purely from experts within the business that would run these power hour sessions. And topics range from networking to AI to planner to how to use OneNote and even Power BI. And what was really key in designing and identifying these topics was, again, linking back to that corporate strategy. Is this session going to help us become brilliant at the basics? And is it going to help us become a performance-focused organisation? And if the answer was yes, then, getting there on the website. I will follow up with that, and I can always drop in their main contacts to the things. But it's not just necessarily eSwap. There are other great companies out there. One that I'd encourage you to explore would be DBLX. They do some great ways to do mentoring, skill swapping, and job shadowing, as well as coaching. So I will just pop in DBLX within the chat, because I know that they are also brilliant at doing this. So in terms then of the eSwap, so not the eSwap, in terms of launching this learning month, so we did the train the trainer toolkit, we did a whole blended delivery, and it was on demand, so it was really accessible. In terms then of the response, we had almost a quarter of employees who got involved with with the initiative and the Learning Month, with over 77% of people saying that they learned something new, which is brilliant. But not only this, we saw an increased manager involvement. So we saw managers across the business getting really excited that their people were giving up their time and taking these development opportunities to go and run these sessions. So great for career conversations, for owning own development and creating this learner-led culture. We also saw great social media support. So a top tip here would be that comms are going to be your best friend, because in terms of generating that real peer learning buzz, that real kind of buzz across the office in terms of championing one another, supporting people that are running these sessions. We had over October the corporate comms posting on our LinkedIn reaching over 90,000 people, which then again helped create this real excitement in creating this peer learning revolution. And finally, we saw an increased appetite for this. So we had, one of the best things for me was that we actually had people walking towards the L&D team saying that they would like to run a session. They had skills they wanted to share, knowledge that they wanted to do, and connect with people. So we saw this increased appetite, so much so that it was built into our curriculum for 2025. So after the kind of the buzz of Learning Month, something that I really identified that was great was this peer learning kind of community that it was creating. But I didn't want to solely depend on just masterclasses or just the opportunity to run these workshops. How could we continue within the company to be able to create something around this peer learning community? So I looked at creating content and needed to create this on-demand content for access, which led to be able to share best practice across the business. So I looked at the eSwap data, again at these people, to look at how they can offer their advice and be willing to come in front of the camera. And in that, I got a kind of great list of people that I could reach out to and ask them to share best practice, which led me to a whole fun array of different things where I could go out with our L&D filming team and kind of go and record and hear from our peers to create some peer learning content. Now, it's really important to note here that although I was very fortunate in my previous role that we had an internal learning and development kind of filming crew and filming team, that it was something that I wanted to make sure that I could create this high quality content. But actually, in the day and age that we live, like, we don't need to be creating high quality content. We're all used to TikTok reels, Instagram, Facebook reels, these YouTube shorts, that actually high quality content isn't necessarily such an important. Obviously the topic and the quality of the conversations absolutely is, but in terms of video quality, so don't be put off by the thought if you don't have a top tier filming crew that you can't do something like this. You absolutely can, and there are some great courses out there for how you can just, in terms of our phones, create these great kind of these video content. But I'm just going to share with you now an example of one of the peer learning videos that we created as part of our leadership series. So in terms then of our leadership community at SJP, we ran some great programs, development courses, but a lot of the feedback we got was they don't have access to their peers, or they can't tap into that knowledge. So we looked at creating a series of leadership lessons and getting our leaders across the business to talk about what are their top leadership lessons that they would share, and that not only helped connect the leaders across the business, but also gave the opportunity for inspiring managers, inspiring leaders to be able to access and watch what is it that they would say is their top leadership lesson. So again, creating this real kind of cross-collaborative peer learning opportunity. So I'm just going to share a very short video. Please let me know if you can hear.
If I could give somebody some leadership advice, it would probably be, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who takes the credit. Every day in my job, I achieve things not because of what I do, but because of the team that's around me and the way that we work and collaborate together. And that's what I mean by, it doesn't matter in that team who individually takes the credit. In fact, actually, it's more powerful if the team collaboratively and collectively can take that credit. To be successful in life, you probably have to face into the fact that you will make more mistakes than you will have successes. I've probably learned more from the mistakes I've made and been more successful because of that. And you're not going to make mistakes and you're not going to fail at things unless you try. Failure can have positives. It's how you recover from that and learn from it.
That was just a short example there of just some of the peer learning content that you could be creating in your workspace. So I don't have time to share with you now, but another great kind of peer learning series that we created digitally was around day in the life of. So going and following the kind of best in the business to talk about look at their habits, their behaviors, their kind of best practice in terms of their day-to-day, and we created this whole suite from varying different levels and grades that people could relate to, that you could go and watch at any time, and kind of theming them into different categories. So that was also kind of one of the peer learning digital content that we created that had the most kind of impact. And then finally, then it takes on to kind of the podcasting piece. So a great way to tap into your peers within your kind of business is to look at doing podcasts and sharing kind of knowledge there and stories. So I have an external one, which I kind of mentioned at the start, but around Every Day's a School Day, where I talk to industry leaders in the L&D space. But we also created lots of internal podcasts across a whole variety of topics, including one around neurodiversity. So getting people in the business that felt comfortable to share their stories, share their lessons learned. And it was a really great way to drive awareness, be able to listen to your peers. And I think what the benefits of this, like we all were mentioning at the start, is the relatability of all of this. And I think I love listening to podcasts, and I love listening to like the Stephen Bartlett ones and listening to like these celebrities. But actually, when you can listen to a podcast from someone you know and you can share like your insights and kind of relate to them, it's really powerful. So again, like the filming stuff, it doesn't have to be expensive, and actually you can get kit pretty cheaply, but also as well they've got some great AI tools out there. So if you feel like you can't edit or like haven't got the skill sets, then there are AI tools out there that can help you do this. So I think, yeah, podcasting is a great way to do that. So thank you for listening to my story there around Steve and kind of the SJP case study that I wanted to share with you today. I will come on to my lessons learned, but finally, before I do that, the final part of my section today is a bit over to you. So how you can design your peer learning in your workplace. So again, I want to move away from this like ideas to action, and that peer learning isn't just a nice to have, it's a way to solve like real business problems, like faster, more collaboratively, and often more sustainably as well. So I want to invite you to think about this question. What's a business problem or a pain point in your workplace that peer learning might help solve? So for example, it could be around onboarding overload, inconsistent manager capability that we mentioned earlier, silos or teams. I'd like you to type it into the chat, kind of a one problem per message. And I can see that, yeah, Di's cat Bob has come on screen, which is great. So yeah, anything that you can share there around how you would attempt this problem. Some great things coming through: AI adoption, collaboration, that knowledge share, that onboarding, managing upwards, not working the same office. Absolutely, I think that's a great one. I think that whole thing I just showed you there around being able to access peer learning content on demand, but as well as actually when you make these masterclasses virtual, it's a great way to cross collaborate, connect with people that you might not get to on the day to day. So absolutely. Low engagement in remote work environments, yeah, conflict resolution for managers, beating silos, absolutely. So some great ones coming through. So a bit like before, if you take like a scroll through the chat and look for a challenge that's similar to something that you're facing or something that sparks your interest, then either like or kind of tag that person and let them know that like you're working on that too, and let's connect on it. So I'd like you to go take some time to go through the chat and really have a look at who might be able to help you. Take time each month to collaborate on where there are consistent issues and plan to tackle as a team. Yeah, nice. Psychological safety, absolutely. So I really want you to ask yourself here, like, who in this room today could help you like keep accountable for making progress on identifying ways that peer learning might help solve. I think if you're open to it, like tag someone or message them to say like following up after this, because I think that's one way that peer learning can really come alive, that it's not just this sharing knowledge, but continuing to form connections that help build momentum. So I think like even if one of these chat conversations turns into like a follow up, then that's peer learning really delivering business impact. So thank you again for being open there and sharing. So just to wrap up then, the three things that I learned through creating a peer learning revolution at SJP is one, really important to link back to business strategy. So making sure that you can prove your impact, prove your worth, and really starting with the business problem in mind. The second would be to start small and pilot. I'm very grateful I did that pilot. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known to have done a facilitation toolkit. And I think it's, yeah, you don't know what you don't know. So starting small, building up, and pilots are a great way to do that, as we all know. And finally, I think when it comes to us in L&D, we often, if we're L&D trainers or facilitators ourselves, we can find this real desire to kind of want to like take over or take charge and kind of jump in. But actually, when it comes to peer learning, the role of us in L&D is to almost to take that step back, but be able to create the conditions for success for our peers to be able to kind of run and lean on these initiatives. And the way for us to do that is definitely for us in L&D to guide, facilitate, and support one another so we can really create these conditions for success. So that's it from me. I just want to say thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your kind of interactive like elements there that you were doing, and some great conversations that came through on the chat. I have popped in kind of my LinkedIn here if you want to connect further and share any ideas or different kind of challenges that you may have. So please do feel connect to me. But I think now would be a great opportunity to open up the chat again and share any questions, but also would love to hear from you and some peer learning initiatives that you're running in your organizations. Prior to this, I saw some great comments on LinkedIn of stuff that people were doing, and I think yeah, it'd be great to kind of share that with the room today. So thank you so much for listening, and yeah, opened up to kind of questions.
We have some questions in the chat before you open the section, Anna.
Yeah.
One is from Joanna, but maybe Joanna needs to give more context on this one. She is asking, are they doing something similar at this eSwamp? So maybe Joanna, you need to explain a little bit better what you meant by this question. You are on mute.
I was just related to the different like organization which we were posting, so I got the answer for it for the next. So yeah, that's already solved.
Okay, cool. Emma also asked, do you use Viva engagement at all for sharing as a community within the company? Was that used as a part of the ongoing community?
Yeah, so Viva Engage is a great one. So it was something that SJP had just started to introduce, but we started to build these communities of practice to encourage this knowledge share. So something that we did was we created our L&D opportunities kind of Viva Engage page and network. And within that, we encourage people from across the business to share different resources or learning materials that they found beneficial. We encourage people to share any courses internally, and start to try and drive that peer learning and that learner-led culture where it doesn't always come from us in L&D, so it's not the same voices, it's not the same kind of drumming on the same drum beat, actually to hear from other people. So Viva Engage was a great place to do that. So if you do have access to Viva Engage, then absolutely encourage you to use that.
Then we have another question from Samuel. Anna, did you have any incentives for encouraging more colleagues to join and share their knowledge? I am thinking of training about how to stand and present in front of a camera, for example.
Yeah, great question. So in terms, sorry, what was it, the first bit again? Sorry,
How do we encourage people into joining the program to share their knowledge?
Yes. So in terms of what we did that worked well, was creating some certificates that people received after the session. So people received these certificates to say they've been on this course, or equally obviously like delivered the course. And they were great things that people could upload to their PDRs and use as part of their career conversations. We encouraged them to share on LinkedIn, which helped drive that. But there's definitely kind of like two approaches to this, because there was that level where you're trying to encourage people to come to these sessions, but then also for those that were delivering it, I got my director involved, and then that person's manager. So my director was directly kind of emailing the manager afterwards just to say, obviously, they got involved in this initiative and the benefits of that, and then again helping them to use that in career conversations. I think also as well what came from this was this social media piece of, actually it was really great for people's personal brand, and linking back to that momentum side of things. Once people started seeing people in the business tap into this and run sessions, that it created this kind of fear of missing out, that people also wanted to get involved. So that was really great to see. But yeah, definitely need to kind of make sure you've got your director involved and linking in with their manager, because then ultimately that's where those kind of career conversations will help them in the future as well. And then I think the second part to that was that around something around the filming element, and how to get people to do that. So
Exactly. If you give training on how to talk on camera.
yeah, so it wasn't actually something that we did, but we did offer kind of some top tips in advance of like what to expect from the day, making sure they felt comfortable. But I think you'll find that people will be pleasantly surprised how willing people are to do this if you ask them. And I think again it links back to this like fear of missing out, seeing what your other peers are up to. And one of the great ways that we would do this would also be going to some of our conferences. So in terms of the world of SJP and financial advisors, we'd attend conferences where we knew our most high performing advisors were at. So the people that had these great habits, behaviors, best practice, because that's why they were succeeding. And we would do filming there and then at the conference as well. And I think well, I certainly was pleasantly surprised by, maybe it's an ego thing, but them wanting to come and be filmed and shared amongst their peers.
Okay, cool. Then we have a question from Brian that is asking, what were some of the data points you used for impact evaluation?
Great question. And I'll be more than happy to share afterwards like our exact kind of questions and reporting that we were getting from this. But we were looking at participation rates, looking at kind of how they were delivering against strategy. So did they feel that they were becoming more brilliant at the basics and helping them become more performance focused? So there was questions centered around that, which could then help show kind of business strategy worth. We did some quite like verbatim feedback, so kind of getting them to really share more qualitative data to get their feedback, so that richness there. And something else we asked to do with looking at the kind of, aside from the NPS, was also asking them what like future sessions they wanted to see. So again, getting that data and that feedback as to what's next, like what else could we be doing, where might you have some gaps, or you want to continue with your knowledge increase. So we looked at that. I think another thing that we looked at as well was that increase in like peer connections, especially across that cross-functional level. So having a look at whether they did like make new relationships, new networks, they've gone and joined these communities of practice or these other teams. So the Excel one, as an example, they had a support group created on the back of that. So again, it's looking at that side of things as well. But I'd be more than happy. I don't know if I can, like after this on email, kind of share a bit further around some of those data points that we use to measure that like impact.
All right. Then we have another question. What were your top three challenges or bottlenecks that you faced in the initiative, and how did you go about them?
It's a great question. I think for me it was that mix in levels of people being able to deliver and facilitate. So I think it became quite clear from the pilot, as mentioned, that these people are like most likely technical experts rather than trainers or facilitators, and it takes a lot to like get people to be able to have the skill set to run these sessions. So that was a definite challenge, and we did see even through the October Learning Month a variety in skill set to be able to do that. So that was a definite like bottleneck in terms of that end learner experience. But the training and facilitating toolkit definitely helped create that kind of baseline level that they almost all had. And something that we've taken then since further is offering like a one-to-one L&D support. So if they do want some further support for beforehand or do a bit of a run through with us, then we offer that now. I think another thing would be around time and this fear that people didn't want to offer themselves up. So when I went and reached out to these people, as an example, the experts within the business, a lot of people came back and said we don't have time, or we don't have our support from our manager to do this, and that can be really hard, especially when you want to tap into that particular kind of knowledge piece. So I think through that as well, it was kind of making sure that we had those management discussions to make sure that they were able to see the benefits in terms of boosting their own development, helping drive the business strategy forward, to make sure that they could make the time for it. And I think, again, going back to like the 3 learns I had, our role in L&D is definitely, when it comes to peer learning, it's creating that environment for success. So how do we guide, support and make sure that they have everything they need to make it as easy as possible for them? But that was certainly a challenge. And I think if I think about another one, it'd be that initial comms engagement, actually. So I said that you need to make your comms team your best friend. That's absolutely true. But to do that, you definitely need to bring them along the journey. And I definitely think I brought them into it maybe a little bit too late at the start. But I think the earlier you can engage with them, the better. So I'd identify like when you are like looking at your peer learning initiative that you want to implement, like comms ultimately is how you're going to start to boost the understanding and awareness in the company to ultimately find and create these networks. So I would say, yeah, get them in, get them as part of your initial plan, which I didn't do until after, and I wish I did it from the start because it would have made it a bit easier. So yeah, those would be the top 3 that I can think of on at the moment.
Okay. Another question from Emilia. How do you encourage those who are less active to participate or create different ways to engage depending on your personality or preferences? For example, people that are shy, I assume.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I noticed that Sylvia there, you replied to that. So I don't know if you'd be happy to come off mute. I'm conscious I don't want to just hear from me. So Sylvia, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing a bit around those liberating structures.
Sure. So it's one of the things that I picked up when I was really looking for ways to get everybody feeling comfortable, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. And I discovered it in Seattle, Washington, by the 2 creators, and they were so easy. Uh, all of these things that I kind of recognized, and at the same time, they had a similar structure. And essentially, there are 33 different structures, and they all have the same 5 elements. And if you pay attention to those elements and essentially just go through each step, you don't have to be a master facilitator. There's no certification, so you don't have to get certified. And each of them help support a goal of human interaction. So they are liberating the collective intelligence of a group, but also helping the facilitator participate if they want to. So you can be part of the group, or you can really hold the group and let the group's energy work. And I would say that's one of the things that I found the most effective in helping people who came in with arms crossed, like, oh, I don't want to be here, to leaning in, to feeling comfortable enough to share and be present, even if they don't participate. So I'm always recommending them because I feel like they're very easy. The first ones are very easy to learn, and then it gets more complicated or complex, and that is mirroring the human interaction, right? Human interaction is complex. So I always recommend, and it's in multiple languages, in multiple cities. You can look for somebody to support you. I do it in Germany and actually all over Europe. And I absolutely think it's a tool that every L&D person should have in their toolkit. Anyone in HR who's facilitating meetings, any manager who is managing meetings, period. So, sorry, that was almost a little ad for liberating structures, but I really found that they are one of the most effective tools in my toolbox for helping people engage and feel included in meetings.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I haven't actually heard of them, so I'm absolutely going to go away and have a look at that. So thank you for sharing the link there.
You're welcome.
I think just to add to what you were saying, when you're looking at how do you encourage those who are less active, for me, it also comes back to having that kind of blended learning opportunities. There's options for people to get involved at varying different levels. So it might be that they don't want to put on a session, but actually, how can we tap into their knowledge? And it might be that you can invite them onto a podcast. So instead, it's like audio learning and sharing their stories that way. Or if they did want to come on a video, or can we create some like blog-like structures where people can go away in their own time and create stuff for people to share amongst these communities. So I think it's when you start to have a look at that whole end-to-end offering of how do you create, like, start to build this peer learning community within your business, and there's multiple different ways. So yeah. But I saw, yeah, so Di just mentioned there, something I love you did was was advertising things on LinkedIn, not just using internal comms channels. And yeah, absolutely. I think that promotion externally as well is just as important. Because ultimately as well, you're creating something like a bit like everyone knows about the Google to Googler. I'd love it if everyone started to know about the SJP peer learning community too. So yeah. Oh, brilliant. So people are sharing in the chat there around some other tools and contacts.
Emma has another question related with if you have any call center colleagues included in your company, how would you have adapted this for colleagues whose time are closely scheduled?
Oh no, we don't have any call center colleagues included in company. We had like people that would help desk for financial advisors, but they kind of sat outside of our scope, but they weren't involved in our direct L&D offering because we kind of externally used those. I don't know, I didn't open up that question to the room. If there was anyone that has done anything around that before, then please do share.
Hello, I can share quickly my perspective. So yeah, call center slash support operations has been my focus in L&D for like 10 years. So yeah, it's a tough one. I would say probably the things that have worked when it's come to the peer-to-peer learning is make the managers and the team leads your best friend, because of course, if they're not supporting the time to be taken for learning, you are getting nowhere. So that really was probably step one. And then we really got creative around where we could build learning time into the normal flow. So we really leveraged the quality team because they're also, reading maybe through the quality of the work the team's doing. They're often sitting side by side with the call center agents, maybe on calls with them. So then we saw, okay, maybe it's very formal learning, but how can we actually pull on that? And then we also found that leveraging our time with their daily stand-up. So when the support team would be starting the day 30 minutes in the morning, getting aligned on, the productivity targets of the day, we always saw if we can incorporate a little bit of learning into those moments. So we're not asking them to do an hour at the end of their day on training or to meet up and talk to each other, but can we actually plug into their existing rituals? And again, if your team leads are your best friend, if you're getting support from, the head of support or the head of ops to take a little bit of time to really be embedded with them, I found that worked a lot better than just saying, hey, please sign up for this hour knowledge session after work or in your free time.
I'd like to just add to that something that I've done in the past with call centres and contact centres is make sure that one of your peer trainers, is from the call centre, is actually someone on the phones or on the chat, because you'll be amazed at how many people want to go and see someone they know. Part of that is like, oh my God, did you know that John's actually done one of these? No, really? Let's check it out. And that's another way of making sure you're utilising the right people, not from external to the call centre, contact centre.
Amazing, thank you both. I know I can see one that's coming around the trainer toolkit. Absolutely, again, like, I'm more than happy to share kind of a good framework and structure for that if you want to drop me a message on LinkedIn. But something that we definitely focused on from like a high level was looking at how to create like a session plan, understanding different like learner behaviors and different styles, creating them like a slide deck that was ready to go, that had some kind of really clear principles to make sure it wasn't that information overload, how to create great learner materials, a bit around great questioning and listening, as well as like even how you prepare for the day. So there was a whole kind of variety of different things that we touched on, but I'd absolutely be more than happy to share if you drop me a message on LinkedIn and I can chat a bit further around that. I think that might be, and towards the end of the questions.
Yes, Tarek, he has a question about L&D careers, and I see that Anna is replying. So L&D Shakers has mentoring, coaching programs, so maybe you can get career advice from one of our partners in that sense.
I can see there actually as well something around from Dan. So thanks, Dan, for joining. But yeah, absolutely so excited to see how we can bring this into BAE in my new role. So looking forward to putting my learns and the kind of things that I know that worked and things that I know that didn't, and seeing what happens here at BAE. So absolutely excited to see that. And I know you've mentioned there your experiences that people love to help each other, and we can help to provide them a platform and a safe environment to share. So absolutely. So thank you, Dan, for joining.
Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. We can wrap up our session. The session is recorded. We will upload it to our YouTube channel and share in the Slack channel all the links and key takeaways from this session. Feel free to connect with Anna on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. And that's a wrap for today. Have a good Friday, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks, Joanna.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.